Ridge Channel 8, keeping you informed on events in your community.
Calling to order the Wheat Ridge City Council meeting of September 28, 2009. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the City Clerk please take roll?
Karen Adams. Here. Karen Berry. Dean Goki.
Present.
Tracy Langworthy. Here. Lena Rotola. Here. Wanda Sang. Here. Mike Stites.
Here.
Terry Womble.
Present, sorry.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes of September 14, 2009?
So moved.
Second.
We have many motions and many seconds. So changes on the minutes? Please poll the council.
Motion carried 7-0.
Oh, thank you. We have two proclamations tonight. I'd like to ask Mrs. Wheat Ridge to please come forward to read the proclamations. Our first one is Walk to School Day. We have Molly Hanson, and we have students from Prospect and Pennington. So please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council, citizens of Wheat Ridge, good evening. Whereas October is Colorado Pedestrian Month and Colorado Walk to School Month, and October 7th, 2009 is International Walk to School Day, as well as Colorado Walks Wednesday. And whereas walking contributes to improved health, safer streets, stronger communities, a cleaner natural environment, and reduced traffic congestion and fuel consumption. Whereas acknowledging that local government officials are extremely interested in addressing the childhood obesity epidemic and want to take action to address healthy eating and active living. Whereas elected and other government officials are paying attention to the importance of safe walking and biking and walkable and bikeable communities. And whereas the Institute of Medicine, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and Live Well Wheat Ridge and Colorado recommend the most promising strategies to address childhood obesity include encouraging communities to improve the streets, sidewalks, and street crossing safety of routes to school. And whereas children and parents from 5,000 schools in all 50 states and community leaders throughout the world are joining together to celebrate International Walk to School Day. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wheat Ridge City Council proclaims that Wednesday, October 7th, 2009 is International Walk to School Day and encourage children and their families to walk to school.
Well, like some good things about Walk to School Day is it's a good start to your day. If you have something after school that you have to get to and you can't have 30 minutes of exercise, that can be your 30 minutes. So.
Thank you.
I think that riding and walking your bike to school every day gets you exercise and it saves gas.
Walking to school is very safe and it gets you exercised and it makes you very strong and Walk to school day is very important so you can get exercise and get a full hour of exercise. It gets you exercise, and so you don't have to just in case you run out of gas and you I don't know what else to say.
What's your name?
Kayla.
Thank you, Kayla.
Hi, my name is Molly Hanson. I'm the Live Well Wheat Ridge Coordinator. Thank you so much for making this proclamation today. I want to let you know that Nick Veraldi, Chase O'Dean, Kayla Spencer, Nicole Collier, and Jaden Spencer were here to also thank you very much. If you have any questions, I have a handout on Live Well Wheat Ridge Coalition. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or if you'd like to participate on International Walk to School Day, which is October 7th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So the next proclamation we have tonight is Community Planning Month. Ken, you want to come forward for this one, please?
Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, and counties. Whereas community planning can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents and business owners to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to our quality of life. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Wheat Ridge. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the professional planners of the city of Wheat Ridge and extend our sincere appreciation for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now therefore be it resolved that the month of October 2009 is hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado, in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, wanted to call attention to the fact that National Community Planning Month has actually come at very opportune times the last 2 years. Last year, City Council approved the budget to embark on what's been now about a year-long process of updating the city's comprehensive plan. That happened last year. This time, we're wrapping up that process at this point. And in October this year, we're pleased to have public hearings scheduled for consideration of the comp plan by the Planning Commission later this week on October 1st. And later on October 12th for the City Council public hearing. So wanted to get those dates on the radar of the public that might be listening as well. Certainly the comp plan Envision Wheat Ridge is fully drafted. It was presented at a public open house on September 2nd most recently and is available for review if someone wants to stop in at City Hall or certainly on the city's website. There is also a dedicated website, envisionwheatridge.com. So encourage public comment at this juncture, and we look forward to the public hearing process. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next proclamation is Conflict Resolution Month, October 2009. I'd ask Mary Zinn to come forward, and Linda Rockwell, are you here tonight?
Whereas conflict resolution encompasses mediation, arbitration, facilitation, collaborative decision-making, and other responses to differences. And whereas the conflict resolution processes empowers individuals, families, communities, organizations, and businesses to foster communication and devise solutions that are acceptable to the needs and interests of all parties involved. And whereas conflict resolution is taught and practiced by citizens in many school systems, universities, and graduate programs throughout Colorado and the world as a way of solving disputes. And whereas community-based programs fairly and equitably resolve neighborhood and community conflicts, thereby strengthening local relationships. And whereas professional associations of conflict mediators promote peaceful and creative resolutions to disputes. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Jerry DiTullio, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, do hereby proclaim October 2009 Conflict Resolution Month.
Thank you, and I'll have the clerk send this out to Linda Rockwell and Mary Zinn. Our last proclamation is National Family Literacy Day, and I'll ask Mrs. Weaver to read that one. I don't believe we have anybody here tonight for National Family Literacy Day. Do we have anybody here?
Whereas as many as 44 million adults in this country cannot read at levels necessary to succeed in today's society, and whereas the problems created by illiteracy affect all residents of Colorado through lower productivity and higher social costs, and whereas the tireless efforts of literacy groups and the Colorado State Daughters of the American Revolution have actively contributed to the success of literacy programs throughout volunteerism. And whereas volunteers in our state have enabled many residents to reach their goals by providing free classes and tutoring. And whereas community programs throughout our nation are celebrating National Family Literacy Day in November. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jerry DiTullio, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, do hereby proclaim November 1, 2009 as National Family Literacy Day, and urge all citizens to honor literacy students, tutors, and all those who support the literacy effort, and encourage those who are able to become a volunteer for literacy organizations or libraries in their communities, and to seek and help those who cannot read.
And thank you, Mrs. Wheat Ridge, for ad-libbing with me tonight. So this one I'll take back to Wheat Ridge High School. Do we have anybody tonight to speak on public comment, citizens' right to speak? If we do, please step forward to the podium. But there's nobody signed up, so I'm assuming we don't. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I know we have to add an agenda item. Would somebody please make a motion for that item? Ms. Adams?
Is there, okay, there's no one to speak on agenda items. Did you do that? Okay, I wasn't. Yeah, I would like to add H under the consent agenda, please. It's Resolution 51, 2009.
Second.
Well, actually, don't we already have an, okay, good. Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
Do we have a motion to add item H? Please poll the council.
Please push him again. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Councilmember Langworthy.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda 1A, motion approving Murray, Dahl, Kuchenmeister, and Renaud LLP August 31st, 2009 invoice for attorney services in the amount of $16,441.57. 1B, approval of payment to CIRSA for the deductible portion of claims paid by CIRSA for August 2009 property casualty in the amount of $26,076.06. Award ITB 0940 Watchable Wildlife Boardwalk Decking Contract to Specialty Wood Products, Aurora, Colorado, in the amount of $24,282.48 for the purpose of constructing a boardwalk at Bass Lake in the Wheat Ridge Greenbelt. 1D, Resolution 50-2009, approving an intergovernmental agreement among Jefferson County, the City of Wheat Ridge, the City of Golden, and the City of Westminster for reimbursement costs associated with construction of the Table Mountain Animal Center. 1E, Resolution 47-2009, approving the First Amendment to site lease agreement with New Singular Wireless for extension of a cellular tower lease. 1F, award ITB-09-38, Emergency Warning System Phase 2 to AV Tech Electronics, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $91,536.75. Resolution 48-2009, supporting Jefferson County Open Space to proceed with the exchange of the open space reverter on approximately 1.75 acres of property located at 38th and Kipling Street to approximately 3 acres located at 11361 West 44th Avenue. 1H, Resolution Number 51-2009, a resolution approving a tax incentive agreement with Starkstrom Gertbau, SGB.
Motion's in order.
Sorry. I move to approve 1A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to pull H.
Okay, we have a motion for A through G. We've pulled H. Is there a discussion on A through G? Please poll the council.
Motion carried 7-0.
Item 1H, Mr. Goki.
This is a resolution, 5051, 2009, resolution approving a tax incentive agreement with Stockton. And Krista, could you pronounce the
Picture from Germany?
It is Starkstrom Gerätebau GmbH.
Say that 3 times.
Is a motion in order?
Motion's in order.
I move to approve Resolution 29, 2009, a resolution approving a tax incentive agreement with Stockstrom.
Very good. Gerätebau.
Okay.
Well, was that Resolution 51-2009?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Stites?
I'll vote for it if we can get Krista to name those names again.
This is all you get.
Mr. Goki?
I would like at this time to have have Ryan explain the procedure and I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses. To how we're trying to deal with businesses that are trying to come into Jefferson County and specifically into Wheat Ridge.
Sure. Well, this is a great example.
Ryan, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record and your position?
Sure. Ryan Stachelski, Stachelski. I'm the Economic Development Specialist for the City of Wheat Ridge. Thanks. The incentive, the resolution you have in front of you is a great example of the city working with business community and with our regional partners in creating an open for business environment. The SGB came to us as a result of connections through the State Office of Economic Development and International Trade, the Metro Denver EDC, and they looked at several sites around not just the Metro Denver area, but also surrounding states. SGB is a supplier of dry transformers that are inside wind turbines. As you probably know, there's a large wind turbine factory being installed in northern Colorado, and this SGB is going to be a supplier of those wind turbines in terms of their transformers. So we were able to work with Matt Trone from Cushman Wakefield, who's here tonight representing SGB, Michelle Claymore from Jefferson Economic Council, and showcase some of the real estate that we have around Wheat Ridge. SGB was able to locate a building with inside Wheat Ridge that suited their needs. However, there's still the challenge of making all the sites that they looked at economically feasible. So they're coming to you in looking for a partnership to help them make this building feasible as they move forward. So a lease has not been signed yet, but I believe that passing this tax incentive agreement would go a long way in helping move that process forward.
Thank you. And I want to say personally as a councilman here that it's been a long time coming to attract these types of businesses to Wheat Ridge and showcase what we can do as a small community to promote the larger county and regional areas. We've just been postponed with our Cabela's project. With this, I mean, it's just good things are coming in the future for Wheat Ridge. We just need to be patient. And thanks for the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm this was Resolution 51-2009? Okay. So we have a motion to approve Resolution 51-2009. It was seconded. Please poll the council.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public hearings and ordinances on second reading. The order of testimony will be city staff, the applicant if applicable, and then the public, followed by council discussion and questions. Please keep all comments germane to the issue. Item 2 is Council Bill 25-2000. I'm going to open the public hearing. Councilmember Sang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 25-2009, an ordinance amending Section 26-614 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning trash dumpster regulations. Would the city clerk please give an ordinance number?
This will be ordinance 1454.
Thank you. Executive summary. In January, City Council directed staff to study the current regulation of the Code of Laws that limits the size of waste containers on single and two-family properties. The laws regulating trash receptacles are contained within the City of Wheat Ridge Code of Laws, Chapter 26, Section 26-614. The standards include the permitted size, screening requirements, and storage locations of trash receptacles. The proposed code amendment would modify the portion of Section 26-614 that regulates trash receptacle size on residentially zoned lots, allowing for slightly larger dumpsters. The ordinance, if approved, would also make changes in the location and screening requirements for trash receptacles on agriculturally and residentially zoned lots. The ordinance has been previously discussed at City Council study sessions on April 20th and July 20th of 2009.
Thank you. Is there a staff presentation other than the executive summary? Is it a 20 or 30 PowerPoint presentation?
Not quite that well.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record and your position with the City of Wheat Ridge.
All right. Adam Tietz, T-I-E-T-Z, and I am a planner in the Community Development Department. All right. As Councilmember Sang introduced this code amendment, proposed changes, it is Code Amendment ZOA 0904 to the residential dumpster regulations. The current regulations allow for residential properties, single and two-family residential properties, to have dumpsters up to 1 cubic yard in size. They do not regulate screening on those properties. However, there is screening required on industrial properties and agricultural zone properties. For industrial and commercially zoned properties, but not on agricultural single-family homes on agriculturally zoned properties. In this section, it also does allow for temporary construction dumpsters on residential properties with an approved permit, which are allowed for up to 15 days, and they can be larger than 1 cubic yard. There are currently residentially zoned properties in the city that are in violation of the code section that's led to enforcement on several of the properties. And some of the concerns have been raised, because of this are large lots produce larger amounts of waste, and therefore they should be allowed to have larger trash receptacles. Also, two-family dwelling units and multiple single-family units on one property also produce a larger amount of waste than a typical single-family home. Another argument is that refuse companies typically don't offer anything less than 1.5 cubic yards for their dumpsters, and that's because of the size the arms that are attached onto the refuse vehicles that empty the dumpsters is typically set at a certain width, and once you get below a certain cubic yardage, that they would have to apply special arms to those dumpster emptying arms that you see go up over the truck. Also, large families produce large amounts of waste, regardless of the amount of units on the property. It prohibits dumpster sharing, which is where several property owners would get together and get one dumpster, share in the cost of the dumpster, and that way there's only one large trash receptacle for several properties. and also that one larger trash receptacle is easier to maintain than several smaller of your typical trash cans. The proposed new ordinance would, there was, when we did the research on this, there was 14 Denver metro communities that were looked at and their trash regulations. 6 of the communities did not have any regulations pertaining to trash receptacles or their sizes, screening, or any of those requirements. Those were Aurora, Denver, Inglewood, Golden, Broomfield, and Greenwood Village. The remaining 8 communities did have some sort of regulation in some way or another, whether it be the screening, the placement, the weight, or the size, or anything of those natures. In this slide, Wheat Ridge is in the gray, and the communities that have more restrictive trash restrictions are in red. Those are Commerce City, Thornton, Lakewood, Littleton, and Edgewater. Westminster has essentially the same regulations as the city of Wheat Ridge, and then Arvada and Boulder both had less restrictive, which is which you can see in the white portions of the table. The new language in the amended code section proposes to increase the size of dumpsters allowed on residential properties from 1 cubic yard to 1.5 cubic yards. Restrict dumpsters from being stored within the front yard setback on residentially zoned property, as done by many of the other communities in the Denver metro area. It would also require that any residentially zoned properties, or that any dumpsters on residentially zoned properties be screened from public right-of-ways, as is the requirement on our industrial and commercially zoned properties as well. And then it allows residential properties on agriculturally zoned lots to have 1 dumpster of any size, but it must meet the same screening requirements as our commercial and industrial zone properties. There were some alternatives that were considered and presented to the council in our study sessions, and some of those changes precluded too that no changes to the current standards to regulate the trash receptacles, and let the variance process to dumpster sizes be regulated by the Board of Adjustments or the department director, whoever would be the decision-making person for that specific variance. Also removing all restrictions regarding trash receptacles on residentially zoned property. Developing trash receptacle regulations where the size of the receptacle was based on the size of the lot or in proportion to the lot. Or also another alternative that was considered was developing size restrictions for trash receptacles located on any lot that contained anything other than a single-family home. Is there any questions from council?
We'll come back to council questions after public comment.
All right.
I don't think we have anybody, though. Do we have anybody here to speak on item number 2, please, on dumpsters? Seeing none, we'll move on to council discussion and questions. Do we have any discussions from council? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and a motion's in order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 25-2009, case number ZOA 0904, an ordinance amending section 26-614 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning residential dumpster regulations on second reading, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion for approval, seconded by Councilmember Goki. Please poll the council.
I'd like to speak to the motion.
Mr. Goki.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a statement here. This has been something that's been ongoing for a couple of years, trying to come up with a solution for this problem. I want to thank staff for their hard work putting this together. It was a series of compromises that came up with this solution, and I just want the public to know that even though we have more regulations now, I think they're fair and they protect everyone, and I think they did a good job.
Any other comments? Please poll the council on the approval.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. Item 3 is Council Bill 26-2009. I'm going to open the public hearing. Councilmember Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill 26-2009, an ordinance repealing and reenacting Section 26-501 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws, off-street parking and loading, case number ZOA 0903. Would the clerk please assign an ordinance number?
This will be ordinance 1455.
Executive summary. Revising the city's parking regulations has been identified as a high priority on the short-term list of zoning code amendments. The overall goal of this code amendment project is to encourage redevelopment and reinvestment and make the city more open for business, consistent with the recommendation of the Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy, the NRS. The proposed ordinance comprehensively rewrites Section 26-501 to achieve the following objectives. Allow for reasonable reuse of existing buildings and site along our commercial corridors that may not meet current parking standards. Create more flexibility in regard to the amount of required parking by allowing for greater shared parking and other parking reductions. Better organize the parking section of the code to make it more readable, including providing more and better graphic illustrations. Based on the extent of the revisions being proposed, the ordinance has been drafted to be a complete repeal and reenactment of Section 26-501.
The city clerk, please assign an ordinance number.
She did.
Okay. Then we'll move on to staff presentation. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Johnstone, Community Development Director, JOHNSTONE.
Thank you.
Just a brief presentation to talk a little bit about, as Councilwoman Sang mentioned, why we're doing this, and then also a little more of the specifics on what is contained in the new ordinance. The background, as has been stated, this is part of our short-term list of zoning code amendments, which are really all about creating a regulatory environment from a zoning standpoint that's more open for business. The current regulations that we have in regards to parking are really, to a large extent, oriented towards greenfield development, if you will, new construction where you don't have any existing constraints to deal with. Wheat Ridge, as you all know, is a community largely of redevelopment, particularly along our commercial corridors. We have lots of existing development that may want to be reused in a different way, and we think that some of the high parking ratios that we have and the lack of flexibility that we have becomes a fairly significant barrier to redevelopment and reuse of some of our existing sites and redevelopment on some of those sites as well. The general intent, again, is to beef up the applicability section, and we do that again, so that when we're looking at reuse of buildings, that we have a little more flexibility. Right now, there's some ambiguity as to how you apply parking standards in the event of reuse of an existing building. We have some additions and we think enhancements to the shared parking section. We've created a section that allows for parking reductions. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We've created a requirement for bicycle parking in targeted locations. And then, as has been mentioned, just trying to make it generally more user-friendly. So now, just an overview of the ordinance. There is significant changes to the applicability section. New development, of course, implicates full compliance with the current standards or the new standards that are being proposed. But the real issue is with redevelopment. And what we're proposing is that for expansions of existing buildings, that the expansion portion of the building doesn't have to come into full compliance with the new parking requirement. We think this gives existing property owners, existing business owners, as well as future business owners, just some more flexibility to add on appropriately as they need, as they see fit, to continue the operation of their business as it needs to operate, with not necessarily a full compliance standard with providing additional parking, which is often difficult, if not impossible, to achieve. Another important provision that we've provided for is that in major changes of use, so for example, if an existing building had historically been used for just a general business, say a retail or office occupancy, and had sufficient parking for that, and maybe even more parking than they needed, but they wanted to convert to a restaurant, which is, I think, something that the NRS identified we're greatly underserved in. You know, we could have a lot more, there's more demand for restaurant space out there than what is currently met. That the challenge that they do is they'd have to come into full compliance right now with the parking standard for restaurants, which is significantly higher, and that can again make it prohibitive for them to be able to reuse that building in a reasonable manner for some sort of a restaurant use. So the new standard and major changes of use makes it a lesser standard, that they don't have to come into full compliance with the new standard, or with the full standard. We have expanded upon the shared parking provisions and made it created greater instances where shared parking could be appropriate. So between two property owners or even multiple property owners, the off-lot parking, in the event that you wanted to have shared parking that was not on your property, does require that you have a shared parking agreement. It requires that it be within 300 feet, so it's a very comfortable walking distance, and it has to have direct pedestrian access. We do have one potential second reading amendment that we'd like City Council to consider in regards to shared parking, in particular regards to off-lot shared parking. We continue to think that 300 feet is a good standard. Direct pedestrian access is a good standard to have. The question that we have for you as we looked at this shared parking off-lot provision was whether it might be appropriate in some instances to have shared off-lot parking across an arterial street. In our initial draft of the ordinance, we'd proposed that it could only be across collector streets, and that was for public safety reasons, not wanting to create a pedestrian conflict situation. But when we looked at some of our commercial corridors where we're trying to encourage redevelopment, 38th Avenue, 44th Avenue, Wadsworth, Kipling, all those are classified as arterial streets. And there could be instances where you could have off-lot shared parking across that arterial street that could have very direct and convenient pedestrian access from a pedestrian crossing signalized intersection, and we think that could make sense. So we're proposing a second reading amendment that's embodied in option A of the motions in your council action form that would add that into the ordinance. As I mentioned, there are some additional parking reductions that are by right. They can't exceed 25% of the standard, so if you're required to have 10 parking spaces, you couldn't reduce that standard to anything less than 7.5, which actually we round up to 8. But so it's a limited amount, but we think it's important to have this. Some of the examples of what we want to make sure occurs if you're going to have that parking reduction is that there's not a spillover impact that would be significant on a neighborhood. We reserve the right to request a traffic study from an applicant to ensure that is the case. Some examples of what would be eligible for reductions: proximity to transit. And when we say transit, that would include both transit such as the future light rail station at Ward Road, but it would also include relatively high-frequency bus service. So along 38th Avenue or 44th Avenue, where we have pretty solid bus service, they would also be eligible for that reduction. Another potential reduction is if you provide an excess of bike or scooter parking, so to encourage alternative modes of transportation. And another example would be structured parking. Structured parking from an urban design standpoint can be a very positive thing in terms of creating a better pedestrian-oriented environment. It's expensive, so we're proposing that if someone wanted to do that they would be eligible for a reduction in parking requirement. It would be an administrative approval process subject to the requirements that I've already mentioned, and again, ensuring that there's no spillover impacts and reserving the right to require a traffic impact study if we think we need that in order to ensure that those spillover impacts are addressed. One other area where we're proposing fairly minor changes, we looked at our parking ratios in general, which are categorized based on a variety of different land uses in the zoning code. Generally, we found those to be fairly consistent with our surrounding jurisdictions. There are two areas that we thought we would propose reductions. One for eating and drinking establishments. As previously mentioned, we think that's an area that we'd like to encourage people to make investments in the community. We thought we had a standard that was a little higher than it needed to be when looking at other jurisdictions, so we're proposing a reduction there. Medical office development, our standard is also, we think, a little higher than our comparable jurisdictions, and we think this too is an area where we could really attract investment. As you all know, example, Lutheran is making a significant investment in their hospital. There's a potential for some pretty good spillover benefits from that expansion in the form of additional medical office. So we want to make sure that we're not being overly restrictive in people when people are looking at making that investment. I mentioned bicycle parking. There's no requirement in the current code. We are proposing to add a requirement, but only for uses that make sense. So, if you operate a car wash, you're not going to have to provide bike parking since your business is pretty oriented towards the car. But we think it makes sense, and we're trying to make it an incentive-based approach so that also triggers the eligibility for a reduction in parking requirements. This has been before the Planning Commission. They spent a fair amount of time reviewing this both at study session as well as through a public hearing process. They looked at a couple different additional policy issues that are not addressed in this, and we're not suggesting that they need to be, but maximum parking is a policy that some communities are adopting to ensure that sites aren't overparked. We think that's too aggressive of a strategy for us, so we're not recommending that. We also, because we don't have many instances of having on-street parking on our commercial corridors, that we didn't feel it was necessary to actually address that in the code, though certainly in specific situations you still could look at that. And we haven't crafted any specific language in terms of using parking districts, which is a tool that might be used in a more concentrated downtown area like a Cherry Creek or downtown Denver, but we didn't think we had that context here. And with that, that's all my comments.
Thank you. We'll move on to public comment. Do we have anybody here to speak on item number 3? Please step forward and state your name and spell your last name for the record, and your city and or your address.
Hello again, John McMillan, MCMI LLIN, District 4, 9801 West 38th Avenue. I'm glad I heard Ken's presentation. This is a long bill with a lot in it, and I heard some good progressive things concerning commercial parking. However, I didn't hear any discussion about residential parking, which is also redefined by this ordinance. So I'll have to ask you directly for some clarifications and perhaps some reassurance, because there's parts of this that I find disturbing. The key question is, will the new rules require paving of driveways with any expansion of a grandfathered structure? Section B would appear to say so. Under applicability, it says standards apply when an existing structure is expanded or enlarged through addition of dwelling units or floor area or other units of measurement. Let me talk about how this would work out in my particular case, not to plead my own case with you, but I think it might be interesting to anyone in the city who lives at the end of a long gravel driveway. My wife asked me yesterday if I'd consider putting a small greenhouse addition on the front of my house in place of a garage door for a garage we no longer use. I said, that sounds fine, that would be attractive, but it would increase the square footage of my home by about 30 square feet. By a strict reading of this ordinance, this would trigger compliance with the new driveway regulations. A driveway is defined as leading to a garage or other hard surface motor vehicle parking area for all uses other than single-family in agricultural zones. Areas subject to traffic for access and parking shall be properly graded for drainage. These areas shall be surfaced by concrete, asphalt, or brick pavers. There's no mention of gravel. So gravel, by my reading of this, would be prohibited for my driveway. My driveway happens to be over 250 feet long. It wraps around the house. Add the lane. I measured it today with the accessory parking area next to it. It would be about 3,500 square feet of pavement I would have to add to my lot to come into compliance. This would not be a small expense. Worse, because I live on a hill with a house lower than the driveway, the increased runoff, storm runoff from an impervious surface, such as asphalt or concrete, would require me to engineer and excavate a drainage system that might simply not be feasible. So I had to tell her, sorry, honey, we can't put a greenhouse on the front of our house. We can't do any small improvement projects, even though those are the only kinds that make sense in this recessionary economy. Now, my situation is not typical, but I can tell you there are a lot of atypical properties in District 4. So I'm not alone in this, and throughout the city. Is this what you intended? Is this a drive to eliminate all gravel driveways? Or am I misinterpreting? I hope so. Earlier in Section B applicability, you call for compliance only with, quote, substantial expansion of grandfathered properties. But the next paragraph mentions no percentage or threshold, only any increase of square footage. To me and other residents, this looks like an unfunded mandate. And those are words that strike fear in the heart of any small government when the state or federal government passes on a goal to you, which you must meet, but gives you no resources to do it. Now, you just removed Appendix J from the building code because you were told and you agreed that it discouraged renovations. Appendix J, for those who might not know, required full code compliance on any property that was being remodeled or renovated over 50% of its value. This new parking regulation, by my strict reading of it, is the same and even worse because it has no 50% threshold for compliance. It seems like one step forward but two steps back. Please reconsider this aspect of the ordinance. If you don't, a future council must. This is a case of the perfect is the enemy of the good. If you demand too much from residents doing small improvements, you're likely to see no improvements at all. And I look forward to you discussing this question, maybe telling me I'm wrong about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnstone, do you want to address the questions, please, on residential parking?
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to look at the specific sections that Mr. McMillan was referencing, but I would just say that, remind council, not that you need reminding, but you recently adopted an ordinance regarding off-street parking surfacing requirements as it applies to residential properties and made a specific point of exempting existing residential driveways from that requirement so that they would not be onerous in terms of going out in the community and requiring existing property owners to improve their driveway to a new standard. So that certainly remains in place. The intent here was to keep that embedded in this document. We did repeat the language in this document. I know in working with the city attorney's office, we refined the language in one small section, but certainly the intent, and we'd be glad to look at this in more detail, was to repeat council's future action. What would trigger a new standard in terms of residential driveways, in my mind, would be, number one, an addition of a unit, say on a residential property that's zoned for multiple units, so that you have to provide more parking, and in providing that parking, you have to provide an approved surface for the parking and for the driveway to get there. But otherwise, in my mind, you wouldn't be required to upgrade a driveway with a minor expansion unless it triggered the provision of more parking. One caveat to that, if you're proposing to build a new garage just because you want a new garage and you need a driveway to get to that, then the driveway would need to meet the current standard for driveways, which is the first 25 feet would be asphalt, concrete, or brick pavers, and then the remainder of the driveway, the first 25 feet off the public right-of-way, that is, and then the remainder of the driveway could be more of a gravel material, a loose material.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else from public comment? We'll move on to council questions and discussion. Before I close the public hearing, any discussion on this? Mr. Goki?
Recently, the state passed a regulation saying that they would issue permits for golf carts. Are we going to include golf carts into that section of the ordinance that refers to motorcycles and stuff like that, to allow them into those areas too? Because
so that they would need to park on an improved surface?
Well, I meant as far as up at the shopping center, Pacific spaces that were required for, what do I want to say? More green vehicles. Electric golf carts is why they're allowing them, is because they're a green vehicle, and are we going to allow them into those parking spots? It's just a question I have.
Yeah, I suppose a very liberal interpretation of the language regarding scooters, but it's not something that we've specifically contemplated at this point. We could.
It's just something they just passed, and I don't know how big of a fad it's going to become. I just know that some people are buying them and driving them around. So, also, in 1994, I built a garage, and my driveway's 150 feet long. I borrowed money, I put it in. It was the right thing to do. It still is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Mr. Womble?
I think this question's been beat to death, but I just want to hear it one more time because I did have a citizen ask me. Existing residential parking, as far as driveways go, considering this ordinance, are not going to require any type of improvement unless they build a new garage or a brand new full detached structure, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council before I close the public hearing? Close the public hearing and a motion's in order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill 26-2009, an ordinance repealing and reenacting Section 26-501 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning off-street parking on second reading, and that it takes effect upon adoption, with the following conditions. Delete the last sentence in Section C.2.B, whatever those little things are, B of the ordinance, which states the following. In no instance shall said off-lot parking be located across the arterial street as defined in the comprehensive plan. 2. Insert the following language in Section C, 2B, C, whatever those are. Shared parking that is located across an arterial street as defined in the comprehensive plan shall be accessible to pedestrians using an existing traffic signal, which includes a pedestrian crossing phase to cross the arterial street. The total walking distance from the main entry of the building to the shared parking by way of the traffic signal crossing the street shall not exceed 300 feet.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion for approval on option A, which was the staff recommended proposal. Second by Councilmember Stites and Goki. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Stites?
I think this is a great thing, and I think it's a great thing to start. I've said it all along. We've got some buildings, I call them pre-war buildings, that were here before the city even became a city, when it was Jefferson County. And the only way that we're going to get them revived at all is to have a little bit of flexibility in what we're doing. And so I think this is a start, and I think it's very good. And I think also, too, there's an awful lot of wasted space on some of this stuff, and I object to that. So I think this is a good move.
Any other comments? Please poll the council on the approval.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, which is public hearing on the budget. I will open the public hearing, and Mr. Goff, do you have any presentation, or do you want to go to public comment first?
Presentation.
Okay. Is this the short version or the long?
The shorter version. Shorter. It's not the shortest. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'm here to present the 2010 proposed budget to the City Council and to the public. The 2010 budget we are proposing at $29 million. This does include our general fund and our capital investment program fund and 7 special revenue funds. This is a 15% decrease compared to this year's adjusted budget. Talking specifically about the general fund, which is our major operating budget, we are proposing a $23.9 million budget. This is a 9% decrease compared to this year's budget. Expenditures in the general fund, as normal, are divided up into these different areas. The police department is our largest department in the city and largest expense at 36% of the budget, general fund budget. Parks and Recreation Department, not including the Recreation Center, is 16% of the budget. Public Works, 15%. Administrative Services is 11%. Central Charges, which includes all of our medical, dental benefits for general fund employees and all of those expenses that across different departments, 10%. And Community Development Department, 5%. General Government, which includes yourselves, the city managers, office, city clerk, city treasurer, 4%, and our municipal court is also 4%. Revenues next year for the general fund, unfortunately, we're projecting at about $24 million. Because of some major budget reductions we're able to accomplish in 2009, our beginning fund balance next year is projected a lot higher than we originally projected at about $6.5 million. So total available funds next year are about $30 million. The revenues are projected at about a 2.4% decrease compared to what we're estimating this year, and we are estimating that the revenues at the end of this year are going to be down about 8% compared to last year.
So this will leave us with a ending fund balance of about $6.5 million. This is about 27.2% of our expenditures for 2010. And the general fund revenues, as you're well aware, our largest revenue source is sales tax. About 60% of our revenues come from sales tax. And property tax is combined in that other tax category, and it's only about 3% of our total revenues. So it's not, property tax is not a large revenue source for municipalities in Colorado. Our use taxes are 9%, and then we have smaller categories across the board. Talking specifically about our capital investment program budget, we are projecting a small budget for 2010 of $350,000. This is an 85% decrease compared to this year's budget. Expenditures for next year are going to be limited to street surface patching, crack sealing, and pavement striping, and also contingency for any development-driven public improvements that may come up throughout the year. Projects that are going to be deferred and suspended that we're proposing to defer and suspend include about $3.8 million in street resurfacing, deferral of miscellaneous drainage repair projects, deferral of the Wadsworth Environmental Impact Study, suspension of our speedboard installations throughout the city, suspension of our Geographic Information Systems project, and deferral of any facility improvements that may be needed in 2010. Also, our vehicles are in our CIP budget. We are proposing to not replace any vehicles in 2010, but we are deferring approximately $2.5 million in vehicles and large equipment replacements, which will have to be made up over time once revenues rebound. The revenues for this capital improvement budget we're projecting at about $300,000 next year. No transfer from the general fund. And there is a significant fund balance, about $3.3 million we're projecting for next year's budget, so a total available funds of about $3.6 next year. Revenues are about a 19% decrease compared to 2009. The reason we're proposing to hold such a large fund balance, we may need approximately $3.2 million for improvements to 32nd Avenue and Youngfield interchange for the future Cabela's project. And this will leave an ending fund balance at the end of next year of about $3.2 million. The Recreation Center Operations Fund, we are proposing a budget of about $2.4 million. This is also a decrease, an 8% decrease compared to this year's budget. Revenues, we're proposing at just over $2 million with a beginning fund balance of another $2 million. So total about $4.2 million in available funds for next year. The revenues we're projecting a small 1% increase compared to what we're estimating this year. And this will leave an ending fund balance next year at about $1.8 million. Open space expenditures, proposing a budget of $1.5 million, and this does include staffing of 5 of our parks employees. This is an 18% decrease compared to this year's budget. Specific projects in the open space fund include miscellaneous open space improvements in $25,000, miscellaneous park maintenance projects $25,000, open space sign fabrication $30,000, some improvements to Public Works Parks Operations Joint Facility $100,000. And the largest project in the parks area next year will be the development and construction of Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the new park at 38th and Kipling, yet to be named. $875,000 of that will be funded out of the Open Space Fund. Revenues for open space, as you know, come from the Jefferson County Open Space Tax. We are projecting about $1.7 million in revenues next year. A beginning fund balance of just over $200,000 for a total of $1.9 million in available funds. And we are projecting about a 7% increase in revenues next year. Also, in addition to the open space tax, we also receive quite a number of grants, and Joyce Manwaring, our Parks Director, has done a great job this last year of acquiring numerous grants, so there are quite a few grants that make up that revenue. And have an ending fund balance at the end of next year of about $380,000. The Conservation Trust budget, we are proposing a $505,000 budget. This is a 30% decrease compared to this year's budget. The projects in this fund, again, include contributions to the 38th Avenue and Kipling Park, Phase 1 and Phase 2. The Conservation Trust budget will contribute $300,000 towards that project. New Randall Park Playground of $60,000. Miscellaneous improvements to Panorama Park, $85,000. And a park playground at Panorama, $60,000. Conservation Trust revenues come from the Colorado Lottery. We are projecting, and also grants, and we are projecting about $400,000 in revenues next year, with the beginning fund balance just under $200,000 for a total of just under $600,000 of available funds. And these revenues are we're projecting about a 15% decrease compared to this year's budget. And with those expenditures, that will leave just under $80,000 in the ending fund balance. The Crime Prevention Fund expenditures, we're proposing about $360,000 in this budget. This is a 4% decrease compared to this year's budget. This does include staffing of 2 code enforcement officers, a building inspector, a crime prevention officer, and the half of a salary of a police sergeant. Revenues, we're projecting about $294,000. Majority of these revenues come from a portion of the city's lodger's tax and also no proof of insurance, fines and fees. Beginning fund balance of $180,000, so total available funds of about $475,000 next year. Projecting a very small decrease compared to this year's budget. This will leave about $116,000 at the end of next year. We also have 4 very small other special funds that are set up. Equipment replacement is a fund that was set up to put money aside to replace large capital expenditures, equipment in the city. The 2 projects we have in mind today are the police records management system and computer-aided dispatch system, and also their police radios. They're very expensive, so we thought we'd start putting money aside so that once these projects or equipment needs replaced, we'd have the money. We are not proposing to put any money into this fund, unfortunately, next year, but hopefully as revenues turn around, we can start putting more money in there. We also have a police investigation fund, which is set up to capture revenues from police forfeitures and seizures. We are proposing expenses of about $25,000 next year. Those expenditures have to be on police department expenditures except for personnel costs. And the municipal court fund is set up to capture those revenues from additional fines and fees that are attached to court fines or parking or traffic tickets. And those expenses can only be used, or revenues can only be used for specific municipal court, victim advocate, and probation type expenditures. They are proposing a budget of $55,000 next year. And finally, the Richards Heart Estate is a separate fund to, again, capture revenues from grants and donations which are used for restoration of the Richards Heart Estate. They are proposing a budget of about $23,000 next year. Staffing for 2010, we are not proposing any increasing in staffing in 2010. That will put our FTE level at 223.88 employees. And as you see here, this is how the employees are distributed across the different departments. Police Department is our largest department with 102 employees. 72 of them are sworn officers. The Parks and Rec Department, including the Recreation Center, has just over 47 employees. Public Works 29, Administrative Services 20, Community Development 12, Municipal Court 9, and General Government 3. Our employee compensation plans for 2009-2010, typically we do a mid-year market analysis to determine how our minimums and maximums for our employee compensation plan are compared to our market. This year's salary analysis did show that on average civilian salaries should increase about 2.38% in order to remain at the 55th percentile of our market, which was an established percentile by City Council several years ago. And our sworn positions on average should increase by about 3.82% to stay at the 70th percentile again, which is a level which was set by City Council. As you all know, we did not make those mid-year market adjustments, which is a budget savings of about $320,000 over 2009 and 2010. Also, typically, employees are eligible for merit step increases on their anniversary date. Civilian employees are eligible to receive a 3.5% merit increase, and sworn employees in the police department can receive anywhere between 2.9 and 6.2%. We are proposing not to include merit step increases in the 2010 budget, which will save approximately $200,000. As you all know, the city does have money budgeted, has in the last several years for requests from outside nonprofit agencies that provide services to Wheat Ridge residents. The 2010 budget does have $10,000 proposed in the budget. We did receive numerous requests in the total of $38,357. And as you can see on this graph, which is very small, you've seen this at study session and we've discussed this. Staff has recommended awarding the $10,000 distributed among the different agencies that requested funds. So in summary, for the 2010 budget, as I did mention before, staff was able to cut a significant amount of money out of this year's budget. About $2.5 million was brought to City Council in July, and that money was officially taken out of the budget. That will enable us to actually put money into our fund balance reserves this year instead of depleting that fund. We're projecting to put about almost $320,000 in the fund balance at the end of this year. We are presenting a proposed 2010 budget which is balanced without using our city's reserves. And essentially the 2010 budget which we are presenting is very bare bones. We attempted to continue to meet all of our minimum programs and service levels as much as possible. So a lot of the cuts come from, as you could see before, from the capital budget and replacement of equipment, which will just be foregone and will still be on our replacement list, but which will just grow bigger and bigger in the years to come. So we'll have to catch up with those as soon as we can. Again, as I mentioned, we, as part of the 2009 budget cuts, we returned the transfer that we made from the general fund to the CIP budget back to the general fund, and we're not proposing to make a transfer from the general fund in 2010 for capital projects. So again, significant delay in capital projects in 2010. This budget does propose a suspension of our large item pickup program in the Public Works Department. There is going to also be a reduction in storm sewer cleaning. And again, as I mentioned, deferral of all of our vehicle and large equipment replacements in 2010. Significant elimination or reduction of training, conference, and meeting expense. That happened also in 2009. We're going to continue that in 2010 for our employees. As we mentioned in study session last week, we are proposing staff furloughs, which will total 6 days for every employee, and that will be included in the 2009 and 2010 budget. 2 of those days will be at the end of this year, and the other 4 will be spread out in 2010. And elimination of the Wheat Ridge 2020 contribution. As you all know, we've given Wheat Ridge 2020 $1.5 million a year, except this last year we gave them $500,000. We are proposing not to give them a contribution in 2010. Just to show you that it's not just bad in Wheat Ridge, this is just a quick graph that shows the differences in revenues between 2008 and 2009. You can see that the red bar right here is the average for the metro area. Wheat Ridge is to the right of that. So we're not doing as bad. We're on the better side of the average. But pretty much everybody in the metro area is definitely experiencing downturns in revenues. So looking forward for the city's budget, our revenue projections through 2014, on average, our revenues have increased about 2.7% over the last about 10 years. Unfortunately, the last couple years may impact this average somewhat. So if we stay on that same trend over the next several years, and then you add expenses on top of that at a flat 2%, but then add some money in eventually for some capital expenditures, about at least $1 million a year. You see our expenditures are still going to be over our revenues. And this green line reflects the city's reserve account, our fund balance. We are projecting in 2010 about a 27.2% fund balance. However, if we keep, if our expenditures continue to be higher than our revenues in the near future, our fund balance is going to be used and depleted by 2014. So our next steps in the budget is budget adoption, which is scheduled for October 12th. And with that, I am available for questions.
We're going to go on to public comment first, and we'll come back for any questions, Patrick. We'll move on to public comment. Does anybody like to comment on the budget tonight? Please step forward, state your name, spell your last name for the record, your address and/or your city.
Charles Holzer, Holcer. I live in 1st District, Wheat Ridge. You guys have a tough job. I'm glad that I don't have to face some of the decisions that you do, but I guess speaking from the perspective as representing the 1st District from the Citizen Budget Oversight, or on the Citizen Budget Oversight Committee, I would ask Council what has been implemented that was recommended by that committee. Now, there are some notable exceptions. For example, that committee was unanimous in recommending a cut in Wheat Ridge 2020 funds, and as Patrick mentioned, that has been addressed in this this budget. My concern is that in many cases, the necessary cuts that have been made have come at the expense of services and not staff. And without impugning the hard work of any of our city employees, I have to go back to what Mary Kavara, represented the 4th District on the Citizen Budget Oversight Committee, said, is that 88 to 92% of our entire budget is taken up in personnel and operating expenses, and certainly have to have people to do the job. But as you follow that up with, and we don't have anything left over to provide services to our citizens, and I think that's very evident in the fact that the cuts come in the capital improvements, in vehicle replacement, and the things that provide services to the city. Not that everybody isn't working hard on city staff, but I wonder if in today's economy, the realities of the fact that there isn't development going on, if we need all of the employees that we have at time. Not that they aren't positions that serve a need for our community, but is this good business to have it at this point of time when there's maybe not development going on, or there may be some other areas that we can look at? Excuse me. I suspect every department, with the possible exception of the police department, maybe even there, it can live without a couple positions until our economy improves. I'm concerned that the council has not addressed revenue generation. Now, I've heard from everybody, and almost everybody, that, gosh, increasing property taxes or sales taxes is just just not feasible in today's economy, and certainly can't be on this year's budget. But I really, really think that council ought to look at that. Our property taxes, for example, are among the lowest, if not the very lowest, in the entire metro area. As far as revenue generation, I haven't heard any discussion from council of, for example, employee head tax. which I believe we estimated would generate several $100,000, or a vehicle transfer tax. Those are fees that can be implemented by council without a vote of the people, and they are also fees that I think are spread evenly enough that wouldn't cause economic hardship to those unto whom it's imposed. And I guess a comment on last Monday's study session. I'm appalled that this council would consider giving $50,000 to Wheat Ridge 2020 in the face of the cutbacks and the, as to quote Patrick, bare bones budget that we are facing. Now, I'm not trying to be punitive to Wheat Ridge 2020. If they were to come forth with a specific project in a specific area, had a developer in place, and were $100,000 away from getting it done and could get a matching grant, that I would support this council and advocate that we give that money. But just to say, hey, give us $50,000 so we can generate another $50,000 in the face of whatever the other things is, I'm sorry. It's unconscionable. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment under the budget? Move on to council questions or comments. Mr. Womble.
Yes, as far as the furloughs go, I was wondering how that affects salaried employees. Is that going to be a percentage of their salary that is going to be deducted?
No, actually, basically a furlough day, people would just not get paid for that 8-hour day that we're closed for a furlough day.
Okay, so it is different for hourly and salary, or no?
Basically,
I'm trying to understand how you're coming up with a number of each different position, what they're, because a salary employee, I mean, technically you could miss 6 days and still get the same salary.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, basically for those weeks of furloughs, I think we talked about that study session, when you're on a furlough day, you basically are not, you no longer are an exempted employee. In other words, you basically become an hourly employee for that week, in a sense. And therefore, what you're basically, I mean, what happens is every employee, whether it's salaried or hourly, don't get paid for whatever 8 hours of pay equates in.
What the equivalent would be. Okay, that's what I was looking for there. I'm wondering if the gas allowance for upper management staff has been looked at all.
We certainly have looked at everything, and that's one area we looked at. But again, that's basically helping.
Is that still in the budget for the gas allowance?
Yes, it is.
And I guess my last question would be: has any of the upper management staff has been discussed to take possibly anywhere from 10 to 20% of a reduction in salary?
We haven't discussed that. What we are offering those, another option is some voluntary, what we're calling voluntary furlough days. In other words, where people can voluntarily take a furlough day to take additional days off to save the city some money. And that's something certainly that all areas of the city are looking at, and certainly management is looking at that also.
I guess just with a closing comment, I agree that we need to be working on finding revenues. That is absolutely correct, Charlie, on that note. And then my last comment would be that it's appalling to me that we're letting go of staff members without looking at decreases in absorbent salaries of upper management staff.
Any other comments from council? I'd like to make a few comments, but I'll wait until council makes their comments. Mr. Goki.
Yes, again, I probably won't be supporting this year's budget, which is nothing new. I haven't supported the last year's budgets for the last 2 years. I believe that there's a lot of hard work that goes into this budget, and it's done from a paradigm that is consistent with standard government procedure. I think we got to start looking outside the paradigm, and I think we have to start looking at a different way of doing business. We've discussed this briefly in study sessions, and I think that that's a trend that future councils will have to look at, is the way the city does business. And to not see any movement in that direction really concerns me. The civilian sector reacted instantly to this economy. I'm sure we're not as bare bone as we need to be. As a city, it just seems like when we're eliminating projects in the capital project area, it seems like there would be some sort of staff member that doesn't have a function or a job because of the elimination of those projects. Somebody has to do those projects. Somebody has to patch the holes. Somebody has to do the work. And to not see any movement in that area concerns me. I don't like to see anybody lose their job, but then I don't like the economy the way it is either. It's just a bad penny all the way around, and I would be open to any suggestion from anyone in the public sector on how to improve this and get it better. It's kind of scary because there's an economy of scale for those communities that have substantial retail, even though their percentages are down dramatically as well as ours are in our tax collection. They're dealing with a substantial amount of more money, and it hits the smaller communities much more. And I know in communities like North Glen, there's multitasking that goes on in many of the departments where many of the economic development people also do other things in community development just because they can't afford specialty people in all of those areas. And their community's no larger, no smaller than ours, and they are a full-service community. So I'm not sure if we've really addressed our budget issues completely. I just don't think this is the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? I'm going to pass the gavel to Councilmember Sang. First of all, I wanted to thank Patrick for his hard work on the budget. I know it's been a tough year for everybody, and I would agree with some of the comments made earlier that we have to look at different ways of raising revenue, economic development, redeveloping parts of the city to generate that new sales tax base. The two concerns I have on the budget, and I'm not expecting council to make any decisions tonight or make any motions. I'm just basically bringing up some things that concerns as the mayor and as a citizen, and I've heard from people talking. As one is, in 2004, the voters approved a sales tax increase for public safety, and that sales tax increase brought 10 new officers to the city of Wheat Ridge for public safety. And that's one of our major functions as a government is public safety. The concern I have is that we would include the sworn officers in the furlough days because public safety may be a detriment to that furlough day. My concern is that the sworn officers have come to the city of Wheat Ridge because of the reputation it has as a city, being a good city, a great police chief. And if we go on to furlough days with the sworn officers, what I see happening is that you're probably going to see a move towards collective bargaining. And we don't want to see collective bargaining probably within the city of Wheat Ridge, but a sworn officer is a different animal than a regular city employee. And I know we're all trying to bring everybody together and say, as staff, we're all going to work for the city of Wheat Ridge and benefit. But my concern is that the collective bargaining aspect of cutting officers off the street and having those furlough days for police officers. And probably Patrick and I and Randy and I have always had a difference in opinion about where the police officers stood within the staffing of the city. They believe that the staffing should be all equal and that we're all city employees, and I agree with that. But I also believe that the public safety and the sworn officer is under a little bit more danger and a little bit different animal every day on the street. So my concern would be is that the furlough days would apply to sworn officers, and that would be a detriment to public safety within the city of Wheat Ridge. The other issue I wanted to bring up is the Public Works Department is responsible for maintenance and improvements to the city's infrastructure, which includes 130 miles of streets and 36 miles of storm sewers throughout the city. Now, basically this year, if this council approves this budget, you're only moving $300,000 into the capital fund. Road repair doesn't go away, it just gets more expensive. And my argument would be is that you should look at that $3.2 million that's in the capital fund right now for 32nd and Youngfield or some of the reserve to maintain the streets, because right now with the economy the way it is, contractors may be able to give the city a better price on construction of roads or maintenance of roads. A 27% reserve is a high reserve, even in a good time. And most cities that I've talked to, other mayors, are keeping a 10 to 11% reserve, which is based on expenses, and they're using that money to maintain the infrastructure. My concern is that the Public Works Department is being cut to the bare bones, but those employees are still being paid by the city of Wheat Ridge, and they're basically being moved to other parts of the city for work. So you'll have Public Works employees working in Parks and Rec or other parts of the city. Keep them busy doing public works projects, maintain the roads, fix the roads, because they're only going to get worse. If we have a tough winter and we have a lot of potholes, a lot of ice and wind and snow, those roads are going to be really bad in the spring. And I would hate to see you have to gear up, and then you're transferring money at the last minute to fix the roads and the bridges and the sidewalks and curb and gutter. So I would recommend, but council has to direct the city manager. This is your budget, and it's the citizens' budget, and this is a recommendation from the city manager's office, which I understand, and that's how it works. But council needs to make a direction to the city manager's office and say, you're going to not do this with furlough days, or you're going to allocate this much money for capital projects, because the brick and mortar projects is what the citizens see. The last thing I wanted to make a comment on is that it's been discussed that the budget would be approved on the 12th in October. I think it's really, this budget will hamstring a new council coming in, and I would strongly suggest that this budget be approved after the 12th and sometime after the election, because I think the 3 new council members coming in need to understand what they're working with. They need to hear about the budget one more time and understand what they're getting into, because they got 4 years to be on city council and to be working for the citizens of Wheat Ridge. So those are the 3 things I wanted to bring up. This is not a detriment or a negative comment towards city staff. They've done their job as far as making recommendations on the budget, but as a policymakers, you need to look at the budget as far as public works, because public works and public safety are the 2 things that we do as a city, the big things. And I would just recommend that you talk to Patrick, talk to Randy, talk to each other, and come up with some ideas on the 12th if the budget's approved that night or later on, if the budget's moved to after the election. The other comment I wanted to make is, Mr. Dahl and I have talked about this, when we're amending or adopting the budget and there's a resolution in front of the council, I cannot vote on that. It's a 4-4. That fails. I can vote on any directions to city manager or to the staff about the budget. If you direct the city manager A, B, and C, those directions I can vote on, but when it's time to approve the budget and there's a resolution in front of council, then it's a 4-4, and a 4-4 fails, or a 4 always fails, however that's going. So that's all I wanted to say about the budget, and hopefully council will take that into consideration, especially about the Public Works Department and the Police Department, those 2, the most important departments we have for public safety and road maintenance. So, Ms. Adams.
I have a question for the city attorney. I've not been involved when a budget was not approved in a certain timeline. Can you help me with that? Is that what the mayor was allowing us to be informed about, and just give us a little information?
Sure, the statute controls that, and
yeah.
I periodically have to go back to the statute and check what the deadline dates are, but I'm pretty sure that, and maybe Patrick knows this answer better than I, but I'm pretty sure if you get it done before the end of the year, you know, you're okay under the statutory requirements. So you could, if you wish, delay it until after the election. Patrick, do you disagree?
Yep, that's correct. It's actually December 15th is the date.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if that would be the wishes of this council, then there would need to be some meetings with if I'm remembering correctly, there'll probably be 3, is that correct, new council people?
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed 3 new council people. So at that point in time, bringing them up to speed would have to be done between the election day and December 15th. Okay, I'm just making facts. That's what I'm stating.
No, I understand that. Do we have anybody else on council want to make any comments on the budget before we move on to item 5?
Mr. Mayor, if I can just clarify a couple of issues were brought up. I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, Councilman Goki did talk about some of the positions that may or may not be as busy as they were, certainly in Public Works, and we certainly have acknowledged that. And just to reassure you again, we are also reassigning some of those individuals, and as the Mayor indicated, and making sure that they are kept busy and certainly working on projects that have been backlogged in those departments and are working in other departments to make sure that we are keeping them busy. as far as getting out of the box a little bit and trying to get out of our paradigm, and we've mentioned this to council on a couple of occasions, we continue, as we have in the past, and certainly the police department has been the leader in this, is looking at regionalizing those activities that we can, combining resources with other communities and trying to do things more efficiently, more effectively. Is there certainly far more we can be doing in that area? Certainly, and we will certainly continue to explore that area. The only other comment I wanted to make is in regards to the mayor's comments in regards to sworn officers. We certainly can't agree with you more in the regards to the risks that they take every day, just being an officer, a police officer in our community. But I want to assure everyone that the furlough program was put in place in such a manner that we will not be impacting public safety on the streets by any stretch of the imagination. We've made sure that the way it was put together and the way it will be implemented is we will not be, you will not see any reduction on the streets as far as patrol officers or police officers assigned to every day in 2009 and 2010. So I just want to assure the public of that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to ordinance on first reading, Council Bill 27-2009. Councilmember Stites.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce Council Bill number 27, 2009, an ordinance amending Ordinance 1446, Series 2009, concerning a time-limited rebate of a portion of the city's building permit and inspection fees for the repair of damage caused by the July 20th, 2009 storm. Is a motion in order?
Motion's in order.
I move to approve Council Bill number 27, 2009, an ordinance amending Ordinance number 1446, Series 2009, concerning a time-limited rebate of the portion of the city's building permit and inspection fees for the repair of damage caused by the July 20th, 2009 storm on first reading, order it published, and set for a second reading at a public hearing in the City Council chambers at 7 p.m. on October 12th, 2009.
Second.
We have a motion for approval, second by Councilmember Sangs and Wamble. Please poll the council.
Motion carried 5-2 with council members Rotola and Adams voting no.
Well, thank you. Item 6, Councilmember Langworthy.
Thank you, Mayor. Acceptance of the 2008 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, CAFR. Executive Summary. Section 10.15 of the Municipal Charter for the City of Wheat Ridge requires that an independent audit be performed annually of all city accounts. The CPA firm of Swanhorst and Company, LLC, performed the audit of the city's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2008. As is reported in the attached management letter from Swanhorst and Company, the following conclusions were reached from the audit. We noted no transactions entered into this by the city during the year that were both significant and unusual, and of which under professional standards we are required to inform you, or transactions for which there is a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus. We evaluated the key factors and assumptions used to develop the estimates in determining that they are reasonable in relation to the basic financial statements taken as a whole. We provided management with a schedule of audit adjustments. Management has determined that the effects of the uncorrectedness statements are immaterial both individually and in the aggregate to the financial statements taken as a whole. We are pleased to report that no such disagreements with management arose during the course of the audit. We encountered no significant difficulties while performing the audit. A representative from Swanhorst and Company will be at the September 28, 2009 City Council meeting to present the 2008 CAFR to City Council for acceptance.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record, and your company, please.
Hello, I am Wendy Swanhorst with Swanhorst and Company, LLC. It's SWANHORST.
Thank you.
Yep. So we're talking about 2008, and I know you guys are already talking about 2010, so I won't take too much time with this. You've probably all got a chance to look at this audit report. These are the numbers. It's prepared by your staff. It's their responsibility to prepare these for you. If you've got a copy of this management letter, that's our communication to you, and that tells you what it is that we did. And essentially what that is you, the council, are the ones that hire us. And what you hire us to do is to tell you that the numbers, management's numbers in here are fairly stated in all material respects. And so within this document, you will find our audit opinion that tells you that we believe they are. As part of that audit, we, even though we don't give you an opinion on internal controls or anything like that, we always look at the controls and the procedures and processes. And primarily we do that because we can cut down on the amount of audit work we have to do. Because if you've got effective procedures in place, then we can sample those. If we don't find issues, then it cuts down on the amount of work we have to do. The other reason, though, that you really have those controls in place is to prevent errors and also fraud. Our responsibility to you is to tell you that if we see any of those controls that we believe are significant deficiencies, and that simply means that the numbers could be materially misstated with the controls you have in place. And the good news is that we don't have any of those issues in the management letter. We have some recommendations in there. Hopefully you've had a chance to see those. We spent a little bit more time on the Urban Renewal Authority and proposed some fairly significant adjustments to that entity because of the property and the debt the property they acquired and the debt also that they acquired in 2008. But other than that, like I said, few recommendations on some things that could be improved and cleaned up, but nothing we believe is significant. So I guess with that, if you have questions or anything, I'd be happy to have, or more detail.
Questions or comments? Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
As always, good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Motion's in order.
I move to accept the 2008 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report from Swanhorse and Company, LLC.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion for approval, seconded by Council Members Stites and Goki. Please poll the council.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. Item 7 is Resolution 49-2009. Councilmember Sang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 49-2009, a resolution requesting approval of case number MS-0902, a two-lot minor subdivision with dedication for public right-of-way, E.S. Allen subdivision. The executive summary. The applicant is requesting approval of a two-lot minor subdivision with dedication of right-of-way in order to allow for future development of the southern portion of the property. The property is located on the west side of Upham Street, approximately 300 feet north of 38th Avenue. The property is zoned RC Restricted Commercial. The intent of the subdivision is to establish an existing office building and associated parking on one lot and create a new developable lot on the southern portion of the property. The new lot to be created, Lot 1, will be 36,491.9 square feet and will remain undeveloped at this time. Lot 2 will be 64,014.4 square feet in size, and no changes are proposed to the existing improvements. The new lot line will follow the southern side of the parking lot improvements from the western property line to the eastern property line. Both lots are adequately sized and have access to public streets and utilities. Motion in order?
Motion's in order.
I move to approve resolution number 49-2009, a resolution approving case number MS-0902, a request for approval of a minor two-lot subdivision plat for property at 3885 Upham Street for the following reasons. All development standards of the RC zone district have been met. All requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. All required utility easements are being provided.
Is there a second?
There was
There's
more.
a couple additional.
Oh, I'm sorry. 4, 25 feet of right-of-way is dedicated by this plat to the City of Wheat Ridge in order to meet the standard for local street width. 5, the east side of Upham Street has been dedicated as a public right-of-way to the property being subdivided.
Now is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion for approval, seconded by Councilmember Wamble. Councilmember Goki?
Yeah, question for staff. In my document here, it shows that the property line is running right to the portion of buildings. Who gets the building?
Which property line is running?
On the south property line, there's I would call it a shed, a small structure. And then there's other structures that are in the property and out of the property, and then there's a building that's partially in the property? Or how accurate is this?
Those property lines are coming out of our GIS database. I wouldn't read them as absolutes. It could be a small error from the aerial photography.
I can see.
Ian, is this the one you're looking at?
No, this
Or
one.
you're looking at the, oh, okay, you are looking at the second one.
I mean, that shed's just more than a couple feet. I mean, it's like half of it's in the property and half of it's not in the property. I'm assuming it's some sort of shed or
Yeah, I
some
see the
sort
structure.
of building or something. And then there's this structure that's where these trees are at, and then there's something there. It doesn't define what that is. There's the shed, and are they going to move the shed?
Mr. Goki, I'm apologize. I'm not sure I can answer your question. The applicant is represented here, who may have more information on survey information on the property as to whether those structures actually are being accurately depicted as straddling that property line.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's going to create a zero property line for the Napa building, isn't it? And and we do allow that in that zone district, or are we creating we're not creating anything there? That lot
We're not
line
creating anything there because that property line already exists.
exists. Okay, I understand. Okay, the only one we're creating actually is the one down the middle.
That's right.
Okay, but I'm still concerned about the shed. Okay, is the applicant here?
The applicant is here.
Would the applicant please step forward and to the mic and state your name and spell your last name for the record, and also your city and or your address?
Make Tom work.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Representing the applicant, Thomas Ripp. I'm an attorney, practice 4315 Wadsworth, Wheat Ridge, Colorado.
Please spell your last name for the record.
R-I-2-Ps as in Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Goki, if you'd like, I can address that issue. Or
Well, did the applicant allow this guy to build a shed or place the shed on his property?
That shed on the survey we have there is no lot line running through it. I would agree with the city attorney that the GIS information may not be exactly accurate. The shed is owned by Mr. Allen on an adjoining existing lot, and to at least Mr. Allen and his daughter's knowledge, there is no lot line running through a shed. Okay. If you were to go look at the property and just see where the existing lot line is, it is a completely vacant lot. There is not a single structure on it other than a little driveway.
You understand stranger things have happened in Wheat Ridge.
We're well aware of that. We don't want to be creating any problems. I think we're actually helping clear a few things up, as in many other parts of the city where there's been no street dedication. We're helping to contribute to resolving that issue. And in terms of the city's economic problems, we're creating another lot for which there may be a commercial application. So,
thank you, Mr. Ripp.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have a motion on this thing? We did, didn't we? Mr. Womble?
I would just like to say GIS is only as accurate as the individual that is running the GIS, and let's just make sure that when we do get drawings that we're not having GIS lines running through the buildings where they're not appropriate.
So we have a motion for approval. It was seconded. Any more comments or discussion on the main motion? Please poll the council.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That concludes our agenda for tonight. We'll move on to city managers' matters.
I have nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
City attorneys' matters.
Just one item. Council had asked earlier about the timing for certification of the election results for the election coming up in November. The Clerk and Recorder's Office of the county is the coordinated election, so the Clerk and Recorder's Office is charged with the authority and the obligation to certify the election results. And until the clerk and recorder does that, the election results are not final and official. And obviously, probably the day or the evening of the election, if not the next morning, we'll be told the results of the candidate elections here in Wheat Ridge. But that will be November 3, I guess. The election results are not required to be certified. Last date is November the 20th. The clerk and recorder will likely get it done before then, but certainly not before the council's regularly scheduled meeting on November 9th, and likely not until after their study session on the 16th. And until the election results are certified, the council members and the mayor in office presently their terms will continue, and the new terms will not commence for the new people until the election results have been certified. And with that in mind, it would be my suggestion, you can take a simple motion, doesn't have to be tonight, but it might be good for planning purposes, take a motion to cancel the regular meeting on November 9th and the study session on November 16. You have the power to conduct those meetings, but you'd be conducting them with the council post-election. And I would advise it might be easier just to cancel those meetings. There won't be much work done, I think, even if you do have them.
Is there a motion to cancel those meetings?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion to cancel, I believe, November 9th and November 16th study session and a regular meeting. Discussion? Poll the council on that cancellation.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That's all.
City clerk's matters, and for the record, you need to say the German word one more time, three times really fast.
I did want to remind the voters that the last day to register to vote is October 4, which is going to be next Monday. And I've had a lot of phone calls today. I think there was a newspaper article out saying that people had to register by computer. That is not true. If you voted in last year's presidential election, you will receive a mail ballot without having to do anything else. But if not, please register no later than Monday, October 4, 5 p.m. Thank you.
And thank you. Can you say that company's name in German one more time, please?
Gesellschaft mit beschränkter Haft.
Krista, it's the 5th. Monday's the 5th.
Monday's the 5th?
October 5th.
Okay. Oh, all right. I'm sorry. Monday the 5th.
Registered on Monday.
Okay. Councilmember Rotolo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, just a reminder, it's to help the food banks that are running low on food because these are tough times. So if you can help out, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams?
Nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Stites?
Please, especially this time of year and especially now, please try to do one positive thing in your community for your neighbors, even your own family for that matter. And it's most important that please you remember this. Please always try to find it and buy it in Wheat Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sain?
Just a reminder to everyone, I have been driving my granddaughter back and forth to school, and there's a lot of people out there that do not watch their speed when they're going through school zones, and I would just say, please, the kids are out there in school, and we need to really watch our speed in those school zones.
Thank you. Councilmember Langworthy?
Nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Wamble?
I'd just like to thank the citizens that came out to my art show on Saturday night.
Thank you. Councilmember Goki?
Yes, I would like everyone to please pay attention, look at your door, make sure you're getting literature, read the literature about the candidates that are running for office, know who's running for office, and when you vote, vote often, please.
I just wanted to thank all the volunteers and the runners at the Farmers 5000 for Wheat Ridge High School, and also the neighbors who had the track and the course running through their neighborhoods. This is the 4th year in a row that I've emceed the event with the principal and some volunteers. It's great. I wanted to thank the Wheat Ridge Police Department and the Wheat Ridge Fire Department for being visible with me at the event. And this year they had almost 900 runners through the city. And so it's a fundraiser for the high school. So thank you for all the volunteers, the parents and students and runners. So with that, we're adjourned.
Wheat Ridge Channel 8, keeping you informed on events in your community.